What kind of companies is Cyprus good for? Are there some companies that are better to be set up in Cyprus, like holding companies, or is it for every type of company?
Cyprus is really for every company, and this is because the corporation tax in Cyprus is so low, with zero dividend tax, that makes Cyprus a true contender in the financial arena.
Is there any difference in setting up a company between a Cypriot, an EU national from outside Cyprus, and a non-EU national?
Let's break this into two parts. The setting up of the company is exactly the same. It's going to be a limited company. It will require accountants, auditors, tax experts. It's going to be paying corporation tax. It will be paying VAT. So the setting up of the company part and the experience of the shareholder is going to be the same. What will not be the same is Hi everyone, I'm Kyriakos Tramontanellis, Cyprus tax and relocation expert and licensed auditor. Today on Finhub Podcast, we are breaking down how to set up a Cyprus company step by step for local business owners, EU founders, and international groups relocating their full operations and headquarters in Cyprus. This episode is brought to you by finhub.com.cy. We are on-the-ground team of vetted lawyers, accountants, auditors, tax advisors, and immigration experts. If you are looking for customized setup with company incorporation, banking, and visas, head to finhub.com.cy and get started.
And I'm Pavlina Papalouka, business relocation consultant and property investment connector. I work with founders, investment groups, and companies, helping them invest and relocate their headquarters and their operations to Cyprus. In this episode, we will give you everything you need to know, step by step, to set up a company in Cyprus and the structure that is the most suitable for you, whether you are local or international. I believe this episode is the basis to start from for anyone setting up a company in Cyprus, whether a local or international person. And I wish, as a person who has had a company for many years in Cyprus, somebody had sat me down and given me this information from the start. So let's go straight into the first question, especially for international people watching us. What kind of companies is Cyprus good for? Are there some companies that are better to be set up in Cyprus, like holding companies, or is it for every type of company?
Cyprus is really for every company, and this is because the corporation tax in Cyprus is so low at only 12.5%, with zero dividend tax, that makes Cyprus a true contender in the financial arena. So Cyprus vehicles are very attractive only for these two reasons: 12.5% corporation tax and, of course, zero dividend tax. Besides that, Pavlina, of course, we have other specific industries that are taxed differently. Such industries are the IT industry, which these are technology companies that may be creating a software or an application. These kind of companies are only taxed 2.5% because they are taking advantage of the IP Box regime, which is very popular here in Cyprus, and the reason why in Cyprus there are so many tech companies these days. Then we have the shipping industry, which of course companies which are shipping companies, they are taxed differently than the 12.5% if they choose to. They can be taxed on the amount of tonnage they carry. So again, a very nice incentive by the Cyprus Income Tax Office. Over and above, trading of securities is of course tax-free. So we have investment firms who are trading securities and they pay zero tax. This is very important. We have individuals who are trading millions of securities and they're not paying any tax, coupled with the fact that if these individuals or the shareholders of the companies I've mentioned earlier on, if they are non-domicile, again, there is no dividend tax. So as far as Cyprus is concerned, there is no dividend tax, whether someone is a non-domicile here in Cyprus or whether it's a tax resident abroad. And this is because Cyprus will not tax any dividends. These UBOs, these shareholders may be taxed at their country of tax residence, but as far as Cyprus is concerned, their dividends will be tax-free. Over and above, Cyprus is for everyone because it has more than 65 double tax treaties, which ensures that any tax you pay here in Cyprus will not exceed a threshold which is determined by the double tax treaty. So companies, branches, holding companies, headquarters who use in their group structures a Cyprus vehicle can rest assured that they will not pay double taxation because of this plethora of double tax treaties. Lastly, but very importantly, setting up a business in Cyprus is very cheap. The operational costs are low, renting an office is low, electricity is low, transportation is low, and of course payroll cost is low. So Cyprus has one of the highest tax-free amounts for payroll tax in Europe. So it's almost the first 20,000 euros, which is tax-free for the employees. So anything above that will be subject to tax. So it's good to have employees who are motivated. And of course, the employer cost is only 15%. It's not 25% or even 38% like other European countries. So in a nutshell, not only you have very attractive corporation tax schemes, not only you have zero dividend tax applicable to all the shareholders who are not Cypriots, you also have low operational costs. So yes, Cyprus is for everyone, I believe.
Perfect. And that's why it's so popular. However, sometimes we have Cypriots complaining that international people who come here to set up a company have more benefits. So I want to ask you, is there any difference in setting up a company between a Cypriot, an EU national from outside Cyprus, and a non-EU national? Because for Cypriots, some things might be easier, actually. But I don't know this, so can you answer this question? What are the differences, if there are any?
Let's break this into two parts. The setting up of the company is exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a limited company. It will require accountants, auditors, tax experts. It's going to be paying corporation tax as maybe 12.5%, which is the most common. It will be paying VAT. So the setting up of the company part and the experience of the shareholder is going to be the same. What will not be the same is two things, is whether or not the shareholder or this person who is setting up the company wants to be an employee of the company, okay, and whether or not this person will be a non-domiciled tax resident of Cyprus. And this is because the Cypriots who are born here cannot be non-domiciled because their domicile is Cyprus.
But they can be employees without any
They can be employees.
issues.
However,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, they will be paying taxes on their dividends, contrary to the European person who's going to come to Cyprus and set up a Cyprus company, and contrary to the third country national who will do the same.
So there are these benefits of the non-dom tax status.
That's the only benefit.
Can we explain this again? So you are a non-dom if you haven't lived in Cyprus for the past 20 years, 17 out of the past 20 years. If you have not lived or worked in Cyprus, you can have traveled to Cyprus for vacations.
Of course.
So can you explain what this is?
The non-dom is an amazing tax incentive by the Cyprus government and the Cyprus Income Tax Office, which made Cyprus such an attractive destination for the high net worth individuals. And the non-dom simply states that we can make someone a Cyprus tax resident as long as they live in Cyprus for at least 2 months and they are not living abroad anywhere else for more than 6 months. What does this mean? This means that these UBOs, these shareholders, these people who want to set up Cyprus companies and they become non-domiciled, they do not pay any dividend tax, which is very important because zero dividend tax makes a lot of difference. The non-dom pavlina also means that these people are tax residents of Cyprus. So you cannot have someone who is not a Cyprus tax resident become non-domiciled.
That's a great question.
That's where the confusion comes.
Yesterday, I had a British person who said he was having calls with other accountants and lawyers in Cyprus. I don't know why nobody told him. And he said he wants to start a company in Cyprus to get the non-dom tax status and stay for the 2 months of the year in Cyprus for now. But he wants to keep his tax base in the UK. Is that possible?
His personal tax base cannot be kept in the UK.
he said he has companies in the UK, so he wants to start one company in Cyprus right now to get the non-dom tax status and keep the rest of the companies in the UK. And when I asked him about moving his entire tax base in Cyprus, he said later. So I'm not an accountant to explain this to him.
The fundamental is this person needs to become a Cyprus tax resident. So he needs to comply with the exit laws of the UK to deregister as a UK tax resident so that we can make him a Cyprus tax resident.
So otherwise he cannot get the non-dom?
Of course. Okay. Or even if the Cyprus government issues him the non-domicile certificate, maybe the UK will reject it and will tax him as a UK tax citizen. So it's very important to make sure that you assign this tax to a professional like ourselves, to a professional by the Finhub platform, which has tons of service providers specializing in these matters. These service providers will liaise with the UK tax counterpart, and they will make sure that this UK businessman has ticked all the boxes to exit the UK physically as a physical taxpayer so that he can become a Cyprus tax resident and non-domicile, which of course means that he needs to stay in Cyprus for 2 months. He needs to have business ties with Cyprus, so that's why he said he's intending to create a Cyprus company or a Cyprus holding company. And of course, he needs to live here for at least 60 days, but not live in the UK more than 90 days. At the time of this podcast, the threshold is 90 days in the UK. If you watch this podcast at a different time frame, maybe this time frame of the 90 days is different because these things change, but you need to be careful and you need to liaise with your consultants in your home country. This is very important before you make any decision.
Okay, let's continue with the differences between a local or an EU national setting up a company and a non-EU national with regards to employees and bringing your employees over or you becoming an employee of your company.
So an EU person or a Cypriot can become an employee of their Cyprus company or of a branch here in Cyprus very easily. Because of the European Union laws, the EU national needs only the yellow slip. Is something rudimentary that a tax expert or an immigration expert can provide for them. And with this...
Can you give me some info about the yellow slip? Many people are asking me how much does it cost? How long does it take to get the yellow slip? Do I need a lawyer or accountant?
Okay, the yellow slip takes 3 months to be issued at most.
Mm-hmm.
How much it costs, it depends from the service provider. So it depends how much the service provider will charge you. Some charge 500 euros, 800 euros. You know, the fees are between that range, other 1,000 euros. It requires one interview with the authorities here. So you need to book an appointment. It's a rudimentary exercise.
Can it be an online appointment or you need to be in Cyprus?
It has to be a physical appointment. And of course, an immigration expert, an accounting firm, a law firm, or even a consultancy firm can do this for these people. It's not something very specialized or something that requires a license for these people to execute for their clients.
Great. So as an EU national, not a Cypriot, you get your yellow slip and then you can be an employee of your company and live legally in Cyprus.
Yes.
You don't need anything else.
No, simple.
What about non-EU nationals?
The non-EU nationals now, because of the EU laws and regulations who protect the EU borders, they require special visas. This is a case everywhere in Europe. Cyprus has only two, at the time of this podcast, has two available visa schemes that these employees can join a Cyprus company or a branch, or they can basically register for the social securities. This is the skilled labor visa and, of course, the digital nomad visa, which has opened a few months ago. If these third country nationals want to come and work in Cyprus, these are the visas that they need to obtain. Having said that, they can come to Cyprus, they can create Cyprus companies, they can be non-domicile of their Cyprus companies and enjoying all the tax benefits of the non-dom and the Cyprus has to offer, the Cyprus Income Tax Office has to offer. We've mentioned them earlier on. However, they will not be able to be registered for social securities. And of course, this could create an issue in their home country. This is why we always consult with their tax experts and their solicitors, their tax solicitors in their country of origin. So if we will advise a Canadian tax resident to come to Cyprus or a British tax resident to come to Cyprus, I need to speak with the Canadian tax guy or girl or the British tax lawyer or immigration lawyer so that I make sure that the exit laws are fulfilled and this person can come and become a Cyprus tax resident and non-domicile.
We also have those who want to be a permanent resident of Cyprus and they get the Cyprus permanent residency through investment. We have an entire episode for that.
Of course.
You are still not allowed to be an employee of a company, but you can receive dividends if you get the permanent residency. So in order for a non-EU national to become an employee of the company, even if they have the permanent residency through investment?
They need to follow the current enforceable available visa options.
Okay.
Which is usually the skilled labor and the digital nomad.
Okay,
visa.
Great. And we have a whole episode for that. And then after you are for many years in Cyprus, then you can apply for the citizenship and yes.
But the exit laws I've mentioned earlier on, they are important because maybe the Canadian tax authorities want to see that their Canadian tax resident is also contributing to the social securities of the country.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly, possibly in the UK. This is not the case in the UK, but it could be that the UK authorities want, in order to deregister the UK tax resident from the books, from being a UK tax resident, one of the things they might want to see is that this guy who is now living in Cyprus also contributes to Social Security. So we always need to speak with our counterparts in the different countries so that the exit laws are met. And if there is a requirement for a third country national to join the Cyprus social security system, then we will apply for them using the applicable visas at the time of their application.
I want to say here that what I've heard from Limassol, because Limassol is a city where we have most of the international employees, and a lot of them are Russian and Ukrainian, which is non-EU. I've heard recently that a lot of these Russian employees, high-skilled, with a high-skilled visa, they go and take the Greek exam, and within 4 to 5 years or earlier, they actually get a Cyprus citizenship. Can you just go through it very quickly again, how this works with the employees, the non-EU? Because it's a very popular topic in cities like Limassol.
Of course. Based on the proficiency of the candidate of the Greek language, they can get the citizenship within 4 or 5 years. But to get the citizenship within 4 years, you need to be skilled in languages because the exams that you need to take, which are the B1 exams, the B1 level, is very hard to obtain it. So it's best to assume that within 5 years, Pavlina, everyone can get the citizenship because that requires a lower level of Greek, and it's usually passed by almost all of our clients and lots of international people that we know. It's the A2 level, and it's the candidate goes, sit an examination, and they get the results electronically. There is an interview, which is basic interview about the history of Cyprus, some political issues, main political issues that affect Cyprus, that these candidates will be interviewed on. But again, this is the simple part. The tricky part, if you want to get the citizenship within 4 years, is to be proficient in the Greek language, which is very hard.
Actually, I love this scheme. I love watching some Russian friends from Limassol that they're there for many years and they didn't have to learn Greek before this scheme. And now they're posting photos with their examination certificates and with their citizenship, and they're now proud citizens of Cyprus. And they also speak Greek, and I can now communicate with them better. I love this.
Something very important about these candidates, not everyone can do this because they have a proficiency in the Greek language. they need to be classified as skilled employees, and they need to be working for a BCS company, which means a company of overseas interest.
Yes.
So their personal circumstances, as well as their company circumstances, need to meet the criteria in order for them to apply for the 3+1 citizenship route, or the 4+1 citizenship route, or the 7+1 years, which is 8 years that is applicable for everyone who wants to get the Cyprus citizenship.
And that's why I saw a lot of Russians getting this citizenship, especially those who work in companies, IT companies of Russian interest.
Of course.
These are the kind of people.
Otherwise, they wouldn't be eligible to apply for the fast track. So if an international person somehow works in a Cyprus company, maybe they will not be eligible for these programs. They are for the Cyprus company owned by Cypriots, for instance. So this company needs to be owned by international people, or the majority of shareholding needs to be owned by overseas investors, overseas interests, as we call them. And this company needs to apply to get a certificate that is a BCS company, okay? So that this BCS company can apply for this skilled labor employee for the fast track citizenship program.
Let's go now into the different types of companies that you can set up in Cyprus and how to choose the best one for you. Now, as a Cypriot, I know that there is one type of company for all people in Cyprus. It's not like Dubai or other jurisdictions where they have a lot of different types of companies. It's more straightforward. However, recently I had a lot of people from abroad, both Europeans and non-EU nationals, asking me about having a holding company in Cyprus and if they should do a holding company or a normal company. So can you explain the different types of companies we have?
To clear the confusion, in Cyprus there are only 3 types of companies. The most common, of course, is a company limited by shares, and this is the type of company that is used everywhere in most structures. Of course, we have the public companies, public traded companies. These are companies that they are listed in the stock exchange. Of course, we're not talking about this type of companies when we're talking in our podcast. And they are the public interest companies, which are companies like insurance companies, banks, and what have you. So, Pavlina, when they talk about holding companies or subsidiary companies or a branch of a company, this company is always a limited by shares company. It's just that this limited by shares company, the structure and its purpose is different. So you can have a holding company who simply holds shares of other companies, and you can have the same company, limited again, is the same thing, that doesn't hold any shares and does all the trade.
So the holding company can be in Cyprus as a holding company, and then all their other companies can be in Ireland,
Of course.
Portugal.
This is very popular because Cyprus has a very attractive tax rate. As I've mentioned earlier on, the dividend tax from dividends is 0. So this holding company receives dividends from the subsidiary companies without any taxes in Cyprus, no withholding taxes, no dividend taxes, and it pays them out to its shareholder, again, tax-free.
So that's why those who are making very big incomes, let's say in another EU country, they can have a holding company in Cyprus and save on taxes in this way.
Of course.
Great. And then can we go into the breakdown of our tax system for companies? What taxes do companies need to pay?
Okay. We're going to talk about the main taxes so that we don't confuse the audience, of course. We have direct tax, which is the corporation tax at 12.5%, and indirect tax, which is the VAT. The most common VAT rate for all the services and all the products is at present 19%. Like the rest of the countries, the rest of the European countries, EU has other lower VAT bundles, and some sales, some services and goods are exempted from VAT, but we're not going to analyze that. So it's good for the audience to know corporation tax, 12.5%, VAT, 19%, 0% dividend tax, okay? And the payroll tax for the employer is 15%. And that includes the social securities and some other contributions to different funds. For the employee, the social securities cost is 8.8%. So these are the main taxes that someone needs to take into consideration when they're when they're deciding whether or not to set up a Cyprus holding company, set up a Cyprus trading company, or even move the headquarters here in Cyprus.
Okay, let's go into the paperwork. What is step 1 and then step 2 when you're setting up a Cyprus company, and can this be done remotely through your accountant, local legal firm, or do you need to be here for some of these steps?
The whole process is seamless and it does not require the physical presence of the person who will own the company. So the first thing that the person needs to decide is, of course, the name of the company, okay, and the composition. Who will be the director? Who will be the company secretary? Who will be the registered address of the company? And of course, who will be the shareholder?
And do you need a local person to be part of the directors, or is not necessary?
For management and control purposes, which is a Cyprus tax law, you need to have the majority of your directors being Cypriot so that the Cyprus company will be considered as managed and controlled in Cyprus, hence taxed under Cyprus corporate tax.
So you have to have a Cypriot director.
Definitely. So if the person who is setting up the company does not intend to relocate to Cyprus and become Cyprus tax resident and non-domicile, which is usually the case that this person will be the director, the secretary, the shareholder, and is going to use their own private address as the company address, then local directors need to be appointed. Finhub has many service providers that provide this service, and they can offer this on an annual basis. So this is something common in Cyprus, to provide the so-called fiduciary services. So they act on the behalf of the client who has not relocated to Cyprus to fill in all those positions. With regards to the paperwork, this is a lawyer's or a service provider's job to do. It's not something that the applicant can do by themselves. You need to be an authorized lawyer, or you need to have a license from either CISEC or from the Cyprus Bar Association to be able to incorporate companies.
Yeah, you cannot just go online on your own and just start logging in and incorporate companies. And
you cannot incorporate the company. Maybe you can change the company details and maybe you can apply for the name, but it's not advisable. You're going to waste so much time.
You're going to make mistakes, and eventually you're going to get fined because these mistakes, they do get fined. You're going to get some papers.
And you will end up going to the lawyer.
Yeah.
So what's the point? I mean, you're not going to save any money anyway. So you need a lawyer or someone who has the authority and the license to do so. So some accounting firms, some service providers, and some lawyers can create companies for your behalf.
And how long does the process of incorporation take, and how much does it cost approximately?
The cost of incorporating a Cyprus company could be between 500 euros to 800 euros plus disbursements. These disbursements could be as high as 750 euros or as low as 280 euros. So overall, the Cyprus company could cost anything between 1,200 to 2,000 euros. It depends who your service provider is, how much the initial fees will be for their services, and of course it depends whether you want all the memorandums and articles translated and approved by the court. So you want to keep an English file for your company, not only a Greek file. If you are in a rush and you want your company to be created fast, in this case, you need to pay extra for the expedite course. And of course, it depends on whether or not you need changes to the memorandum and articles of association. So if you don't need your company to be incorporated fast, the Cyprus company could take up to a month to be incorporated. If the Cyprus Register of Companies is very busy, it could take up to 2 months. But if you pay extra, that's why the disbursements almost double, you could have the company within less than a month incorporated. Definitely not within a week. Between 2 and 3 weeks, you can have the company being incorporated.
What about public interest companies, which are bigger structures? Does it take longer for those companies to set up in Cyprus, and what is the process?
Okay, it's good to distinguish between licensed entities and non-licensed entities. So Public interest entities are, of course, the most regulated entities, and that's why their license takes longer to be issued because, as the word says, they are for the benefit of the public. So such companies and such entities could be investment funds, investment firms, insurance companies, banks, any other institution, governmental institution that acts on behalf of the public, or holds public's funds, or holds public's interests, whatever that might be. So these kind of entities, as I've mentioned earlier on, they require a different way of getting approved, getting incorporated than the ordinary non-licensed entities, which are the most common, the limited by shares.
However, these companies, the bigger ones, the public interest, they bring most of the income, I believe, in Cyprus, and they have a lot of compliance behind them. Do forex companies, are they included in the public interest companies?
Of course.
So we have a lot of them in Cyprus, and then that's
course.
why I'm asking this question, because setting up a forex company or any other public interest company has a lot of compliance as well. So what is the process, and what is the timeline and cost expected for anyone wanting to set up this kind of company?
To incorporate such a company, it's a limited company, of course. You start as a limited company, and it depends. If it's going to be listed in the stock exchange, its memorandums and articles need to change. If it's going to be an investment firm, different memorandum and articles will apply, specific ways of how this investment firm will operate. These regulated entities, Pavlina, have one thing in common. They required proper substance, proper organizational structure, and proper systems and controls. So before you get your license to trade such a company, whether it's an investment firm, whether it's an insurance company, or whether it's a bank, you need to compile a thick pile of paperwork which will be provided to the regulator. And this paperwork would show exactly what you are intending to create, how this company will be managed and controlled, which systems you will have in place. It will require business plans, organizational charts of who will be the key people, the shareholders, part of the 4 I's of the management, who will be your money laundering compliance officer. And you need to file this application in a complete manner. In other words, you cannot mumble about things. You need to say that you have found your compliance officer and attach or provide their CVs. You need to provide CVs of your executive directors. All these people need to be approved before you get a license.
And then you need to follow the compliance,
Of
because
course,
I know a
of
lot
course.
of people, they come,
Yeah.
some millionaires from abroad, they set up these forex companies or any other of these financial companies, and then within a couple of years or 3 years, they disappear. So you need to actually follow the compliance, because they get in trouble if they don't.
Of course, but prior to that, whatever you include in the application for such a license needs to be evidenced by facts. So if you're saying in your business plan, for instance, that you will be using 5 platforms, the regulator will be expecting to see these 5 platforms' fees in the business plan, and will be expecting to see capable people, knowledgeable people running these platforms. And they will expect to see appropriate salaries included in the business plan. So it's a very serious process. We as service providers do this for insurance companies and investment firms. The costs, as you've mentioned, exceed the fees to perform such a service start from 40,000 euros and could be up to 150,000 euros. It takes 6 to 18 months. We're saying 6, but really is never 6. So I would say it's 8 months to 24 months.
Wow.
Yes.
It's a lot.
There's lots of exchange of information, lots of meetings, lots of Skype calls and Zoom meetings, not only with the applicants and their key force, but also with the regulator, who will meet in person. Of course, the applicants, and prior to in-person call, they will meet them by Zoom. They need to approve everything. If they have issues, questions, they will send us a checklist of matters to be resolved. So it's a proper process. Contrary to the normal limited company, which is not regulated. It can be a holding company, can be a trading company. It can be a company that is just sitting there just to reserve a name or whatever other purpose you might need that company to do. So it's a very good question, and our listeners and our audience should also consider whether these activities are regulated or not. Because if they are regulated activities, a regulated entity is required, which entails all these tedious processes.
And of course, the service provider you use for this kind of entity needs to have some experience, be
Definitely.
a certain type of company that can help you, or the size of the company because of the work involved. It doesn't need to be very big, but they need to have this kind of knowledge. And you can find these service providers, again, on finhub.com.cy, because we have some of the biggest legal and accounting firms and fiduciary firms on the platform who have experience.
A common issue that we experience is that even the UBOs or their management, there are certain things that they do not know how to fill in. So there's certain information that these people cannot know about. And this is where the experience of the service provider comes, who will fill in the gaps in the actual application. So it matters. Experience does matter a lot.
Great. So let's go more into logistics now of setting up a company. There are some details like proving that your company is really based in Cyprus. How do you prove that?
You are referring, of course, to the substance requirements. A typical substance requirement is, of course, to have your Cyprus company here in Cyprus. So the first step is to create a Cyprus company. Then you need a local management and control, which are the director, the company secretary of the company, and usually the registered address. Of course, they need to be in Cyprus, and a local bank account. These are the easy substance criteria that 99% of the companies meet. However, to add more substance to this, it's good to have local employees, of course, and have some operations coming from Cyprus. Cyprus will not test the substance of your Cyprus entity. The Income Tax Office has a light view on the matter. It is the overseas tax authorities that the shareholders of the newly established Cyprus company need to keep an eye on in order for them to be comfortable that they will not be checked or that their Cyprus substance meets their overseas criteria. Is what I've mentioned earlier on. Someone from Italy who wants to set up a Cyprus company and wants to be comfortable with the Cyprus substance, they need to make sure that they know what the Italian tax authorities consider as adequate substance, because whatever you do here in Cyprus, if the Italian authorities do not consider it adequate, you might get in trouble. It's important to note that Cyprus follow the CFC rules, which have been introduced to Cyprus since 2019, control foreign companies, and I'm not going to go into the details of this, but because of Cyprus' low corporation tax rate, Cyprus has a light view and a light approach to the CFC rules, because almost in all cases there is no breach of the CFC rules with subsidiary companies. We can make another episode about this, but overall, substance means more weight to your Cyprus company. It could mean more employees, it could mean bigger offices, it could mean more trading from your Cyprus entities. Ideally, it could mean shift a lot of your operations via your Cyprus company and don't just have a paper company that does big turnovers.
Okay, then what are the registrations that every company must complete and get passwords for? And is it advisable to delegate it all to your accountant, or can you do some of it on your own? I know the answer, so I'm asking you. I just have a list of the passwords, TaxisNet and SysNet and all this.
It's impossible, and you shouldn't bother with these kind of things because you'll waste so much time and you're going to lose focus from your core business. Registrations for tax registrations with the authorities should be kept at the accountant's level. And in Cyprus, you register with the Taxisnet for your VAT and corporate tax submissions. You register with the Cyprus Registrar of Companies for your company financial statements. And of course, you register with Ariadne, which is the new software here, that you do a lot of things here like employees, benefits of employees, registering employees, sick leaves, maternity leaves, as well as many other domesticated bureaucratic manners that go through that channel. Cyprus is changing the way it operates, so it is evolving. Maybe new systems will be introduced. So please don't waste your time with registering in all these software and platforms, because even if you do register, you won't be able to do any submissions. You need the accountant or the auditor to do the submissions, as they keep the information to be submitted anyway.
Yeah, you need training to actually know how to use those platforms. It's not for the average business owner and the average person. You can make so many mistakes.
These considerations are by micro businesses who think that they can save 200 euros or 150 euros. I mean, businesses with employees, they don't even consider doing any of this in-house. Everything is outsourced to the local accountants and auditors.
So let's go into the payroll then. We have Ariadne, as you said, that your accountant will manage payroll, but can you explain how it works and what do company founders need to know when they're setting up in Cyprus?
They need to know that Cyprus payroll, like the rest of European payroll, is very complex. Actually, payroll is one of the most complex areas of accounting in Cyprus. It has to be performed by registered, regulated accounting software, which executes correctly and makes the appropriate deductions from the salaries. Some of the complications of payroll is, of course, the incentives that Cyprus has for employees. So overseas employees who come to Cyprus and work for the first time, they might be taxed only 20% of their first 3 years' worth of salaries, or they could have the exemption. So for 17 years, if they're earning more than 55,000 euros, if they're high earners, their payroll deductions will be 50% waived. However, this creates complications into the actual payroll. Bonuses create complications in the actual payroll system. Sick leaves, maternity leaves, all these affect the different taxes, different social security rates, and of course you need a very strong accountant, a very strong service provider to assist you with the payroll. So it's very important to outsource this task. It's impossible to do it in-house unless you have a qualified accountant or a very experienced accountant in payroll and you have all the appropriate software to support you. Otherwise, everything is outsourced, again, to regulated audit and assurance firms who can do this for you. What else can we talk about payroll? The social security in Cyprus is relatively low when you compare it to the most European countries. The employer's cost is 15.5%. Employees' contributions is 8.8%. Everyone gets a pension at 65, I believe. But again, depending when you're going to see this podcast, these numbers change. Something very important about the payroll is that you have to contribute to the local NHS, which is the YESI system. Is 2.65% at present. And this, of course, entails you to free medical care. You can only pay 5 or 10 euros, I think, per visit. Actually, I've never visited it myself, but we have clients and friends and relatives who are using it, and they're very happy about it.
I'm using it, and I'm very happy.
Of
you
course.
pay 10 euro per visit until you meet the 150 euro a year.
Okay.
And then you can do everything else for free. You might need, God forbid, an operation or something more difficult, and then you get everything for free after you pay those 150 euros in the YESI. So it's very convenient for anything. You can do your blood test, your yearly doctor's exams, everything with just 150 euro. You can go as many times as you need. So it's excellent. For me, it's excellent because you can actually even test 3 doctors for an issue. Let's say you have a heart issue. You need to go to a heart doctor. Your personal doctor will give you a paper that you have 3 visits. So you can even visit 3 different doctors. choose the doctor you need, and then you can go as many times as you need. So for me, Yesi has been excellent because I needed it, and it has worked amazingly well, and for my family and parents. So next question, very important, is how easy it is to start a bank account for a company, for a local, for an EU national, and is it different for non-EU nationals? I have an example of a client I had from a high-risk industry, Forex, who I remember because he was paying me, I was issuing invoices, and they had problems because of their compliance that they were not following properly. The government would not open a bank account on the company that he wanted to open the bank account for. And I used to issue invoices for another company, and then he would send the money from the European country to another company that was a sister company, so that we would get the payments. It was complicated. So bank accounts is not that easy, especially for high-risk industries, but for a basic company, a basic limited, can you tell me and what happens for high-risk industries as well?
Normal industries, normal clients, whether they are Cypriots or from abroad, opening a bank account is quite simple these days. It used to be a bit more complicated in the past, but now everything is streamlined. We are opening bank accounts every week without any issues. So it doesn't really matter whether the applicant is a Cyprus person who lives in Cyprus, a Cypriot, or an EU person, or even a third country national. What is important, Pavlina, is what you've mentioned, is whether or not these applicants are dealing with high-risk industries and whether or not their background comes from high-risk industries, because the banks need to know their clients, and of course, they need to know their source of funds and wealth. So they need to know where they have created and accumulated their wealth, whether this can be supported. And similarly, if these applicants operate in a high-risk industry, simply they will be rejected, not for any other reason, because the appetite of the specific bank does not want to have to do anything with the specific industries. Such high-risk industries could be Forex companies, gambling, gaming industries, because they include some gambling as well, adult entertainment industry, weapons, and what have you. So it's very hard in Cyprus to open a bank account, a local bank account, for any of those industries. Some local banks now are a bit more open to Forex accounts, so they can open clients' accounts for local Forex companies, but the other industries, the applicant won't be able to open such a bank account because they are excluded. Is a Cyprus Central Bank's requirement, and they follow it rigorously.
So if somebody who is setting up a company goes to a Cyprus bank and wants to open a new account, what information will the bank ask them to provide? I remember the last time I moved a branch of my company, so it was like a new account in a new branch. It was a few years ago. The information I had to provide was the certificates of incorporation, and then they asked me who I will be receiving money from and what activities I have with these people and the amounts. If they are big amounts, I needed to give them the people I work with and who I expect money from. So that was my experience. Can you give me the step-by-step process?
Yes, we're talking about corporate bank accounts. So of course, the banks need to know firstly who the owner of the company is. So they will request about the owner, their CVs, their source of wealth, source of funds. So they need to provide a statement as to how much money they have and how they have acquired it. If these applicants are employees of a big company, big multinational company, or if they are businessmen that own businesses, they need to provide the bank with links to their websites and evidence that actually they own these companies. It's very important. So that's the first step. So the first step of the bank is to know who owns this company that I will provide.
And they do very rigorous due diligence. Yes. It was not the same as 20 years ago when I started my first company.
Yes. So this is the first question. Then, of course, they will ask information about the company itself that will have the bank account. They will need to see the corporate website. They will need to know who the suppliers of the company are, who the clients are, what are the company's main activities, expected turnover, expected incomings and outcomings of the company. Of course, usually these companies are newly incorporated, so they don't provide financial statements. But if it's an existing company, they will request financial statements, of course. And this is the first layer of information that the bank will obtain in order to feel that they know who the applicant is, how they made their money, and what the company does, and what is intending to do with the bank account.
Mm-hmm.
Now, within this application, the bank will be alert to see if the company is doing any prohibited activities, is entering into any risky industries or services, or dealing with products that could be of dual use. And of course, after they do the checks on everything, they will do an interview with the owner of the company, a video interview. So the whole application is done remotely. The UBO or the bank signatory does not have to come to Cyprus for the corporate bank account to be opened. This is done remotely by the banks. And this is it, basically. I mean, unless you're coming from a risky industry that the bank may have appetite to open your bank account, this is the simple process. It's a bit tedious because there are many questions, of course. And this is why service providers do it and they charge for it. And they advise the clients not to do it themselves because they will get so much annoyed with Cyprus and with the Cyprus banking system. Don't get annoyed. Outsource this to your accountants or your auditors or your consultants. Let them open the bank account for you, and your experience with Cyprus will be a nice, pleasant experience.
Basically, you pay for peace of mind and for everything to be smooth. As a local, I did it on my own because I had all the information, but I still need to ask my accountant to provide any information that the bank requested. So, what are the current incentives that we have in Cyprus that maybe we haven't mentioned that businesses should not ignore? It could be relevant to them. Can you mention any other incentives that we left behind?
We have the EU incentives that are applicable to all European companies. So the EU from time to time opens special funds for Cyprus companies. Such funds could be for industrial equipment. It could be for renovations of offices. It could be for acquisition of new technological equipment or for the acquisition of plant and machinery. Commonly, there are always open schemes for the hiring of employees, which is also very popular here in Cyprus because this scheme is open across the EU and Cyprus companies take advantage of. Other than that, other schemes are, of course, the recruitment of high-skilled employees who are earning more than 55,000. I've mentioned it earlier. These people are taxed at 50% of the pay-as-you-earn tax. So not only the employer pays 50% less employer's costs, but also the employee pays much less social securities and pay-as-you-earn. Another incentive that the Cyprus Income Tax Office offers is, of course, the national interest deduction, which is an incentive to the shareholders who want to incorporate a company or do business in Cyprus, not by debt, but by adding capital to the company. They get a tax credit based on the capital they have contributed. So this is a nice incentive. We have mentioned earlier on the IP Box, which is a brilliant tax scheme that taxes the technology companies only 2.5%. The Cyprus government created the Business Facilitation Unit over the last few years, which is a centralized unit where applicants can apply through that route to create a Cyprus company, register employees with social securities, register employees with visas, and of course do everything in a centralized manner instead of hiring service providers who will do it for them. This is a new incentive as well. We haven't tested it, so I cannot comment whether it's good or not. It's a government organization, so I cannot comment whether it's fast, not fast, efficient or non-efficient. Of course, the low corporation tax here in Cyprus and the industries that are taxed even lower than the 12.5% are good incentives, are good enough incentives for anyone who wants to come here and do business, either in Cyprus or have a vehicle in Cyprus who does business internationally.
important question that me and many other people have in Cyprus is with regards to the funding schemes, both the local that the government opens and the European. Can your accountant help you? Do accountants know these schemes, or do you need to go to a specialized company? Do you ask your accountant if they can help you? How do you proceed? Can you go on your own? Because I know it's very difficult to apply to these schemes on your own. I wouldn't do that. So what is the process?
It all depends on the program. There are programs that are more than 100,000 worth of funding, and they are very specialized programs which your local accountants or lawyers cannot execute, simply because they don't have the expertise nor the resources to do such programs. These are programs that require quarterly reporting to the European Union, reporting every 6 months to the European Union, keeping timesheets, keeping lots of information at the back office so that you comply with the program's requirements. So for this kind of programs, it's best to outsource them to a specialist that deals only with this kind of programs. Now, programs with regards to industrial equipment, technological enhancements, recruitment of employees, building of factories and stuff like that, these are programs that consultants, your accountants, and in rare cases, even your lawyers can do, and is subject to whether or not they provide such services. So we are providing such services to our clients, but it's not common for accountants to provide such services to their clients because it falls outside the rudimentary operations of the business. These services are not regulated, so if you have a consultant in mind who has experience, by all means, use them. They will get the job done.
Okay, so you have set up your Cyprus company, and now you have some yearly compliance that you should not ignore because you will get in trouble and your accountant needs to do. We have the yearly audits, the VAT filings every 3 months. Can you give us a breakdown?
Of course. Running a Cyprus company is a bit of a nightmare. Of course, you are not doing it. The service providers are doing it for you.
I want to say, if you don't do things properly, it's a nightmare because you get fined. I received an email yesterday for the what is it called?
The UBO declaration, of
course. And
it has to be renewed every year.
I already told my accountant, please do it for me because I will get fined. I got some small fine before because I delayed. I ignored emails. So now I am just so aware of doing everything on time and of delegating everything. Because, like we said before, if you try to log in on your own and do that yearly compliance,
it's impossible.
It's going to go wrong somewhere.
It's impossible. So I said a nightmare because there's so much work, even for such small Cyprus companies. The accountant needs to be preparing, submitting quarterly VAT returns or maybe monthly VIS returns if you're providing services or goods within the Europe, Then at the year end, you need to do the annual accounting and the annual audit of the company. Every month, of course, you need to be paying payroll and you need to be paying payroll taxes. Afterwards, you need to be submitting all this information to the local authorities. So maintaining a Cyprus company is a monthly task for all Cyprus companies, irrespective of their size. So it's a very good question.
And have it in your expenses depending on the size of your company and your needs. Your accountant is a stable member of your team that needs to get paid, your accounting firm.
And in Cyprus, accountants are not charging as high as in the other European countries, so I wouldn't bother and I wouldn't try to get a cheap accountant or I wouldn't bargain with them because the amount of effort they do on a monthly basis is tremendous for such a small company.
So can you give us a cost for the average cost for an audit, a basic audit of an average company and VAT returns? Of course, there's no average because it depends on the size.
But if we're talking about companies with turnover of less than 300,000 or maybe less than 500,000, all these costs together should be 5,000 plus or minus one
per year. Which is
nothing. If we're talking about companies which are making millions and they have lots of operations, lots of payroll, lots of employees, again, it depends on the volume, how many invoices the accountant needs to process, how many payroll records per month, how many pay slips the payroll expert needs to process, and of course, the auditor, how complex is the company, what's the risk of the auditor for signing off the audit. All this contribute to the costing.
There is a risk because
Of
people don't know that auditors and accounting firms, they also get checked by the government and they have very rigorous
Yes, we are
checks.
regulated. We are regulated by ICPAC and, of course, by our members and by our institutes, the ICAW and the ACCA. So we need to make sure that our audit opinion stands against scrutiny by another expert. Similarly, we have the contact of ethic. We cannot onboard any type of client. Over and above the work that the accountant does, we forgot to mention, of course, compliance and AML regulations. So even if you are a small company, we need to onboard you. The accountant needs to onboard you. Your lawyer needs to onboard you. Every year, they need to keep certain records for you for AML purposes. They need to know where you live. They need to keep recent passports. They need to know how you have accumulated your wealth, your funds, where they're coming from. And if they see any suspicious, they are responsible. So it's a very good question, because irrespective of the size of the company, certain rudimentary, tedious, and recurring tasks are performed each month, every year, year on year, for all clients.
In simple words, for the rest of us who are not accountants, if you do not follow the rules and the compliance and the accountant agrees with that, they're going to get in trouble. So they need to advise you if you are doing something that is not proper, because their firm can get in legal trouble. So it doesn't, everything needs to happen properly and legally.
Again, if the question falls for a regulated entity, such as an investment firm, a fund, a bank, or an insurance company, then the work of the accountants, the auditors, and of course the compliance officer is much more. Because, as we said, these are public interest entities. These are regulated entities.
So the yearly expenses are much higher because it's a lot of compliance, a lot of work.
Course. Irrespective of the actual accounting work, the audit work, and the tax work, and the VAT work, there is more reporting to the regulator. There is quarterly reporting. There is monthly reporting of different things. There is 6-month reporting to the regulator. And of course, there is a 12-month reporting to the regulator. And these are reports, very complicated, very sophisticated reports, over and above the rudimentary work that the accountant, the auditor, is doing for a normal company. Of course, this reporting to the regulator is not performed by the accountant or the auditor under their hat, but either they are performed internally, or these companies, these investment firms, these insurance companies may be buying services, from accountants, from service providers to perform them on their behalf. So the reporting in Cyprus, whether you are a regulated entity or a non-regulated, a normal limited by shares company, is quite significant. And of course, it's something that you outsource to a service provider.
And I want to mention here regarding the costs. I remember in our Cyprus versus Dubai episode, go watch it if you're considering Dubai, we made it clear that these fees of the Cyprus accountants and lawyers are much lower than jurisdictions like Dubai. So overall, for the same type of company, if you set up in Dubai versus Cyprus, you will have maybe a 50% to 40% less costs for your service providers in Cyprus. Is that correct?
It's correct. It also comes at the quality of service versus what you're paying. But yes, overseas jurisdictions, they are more expensive than Cyprus. So salary costs need to be met, living expenses need to be covered, running an office there needs to be covered, and all these are added to the price tag of the service for professional services. This is a case in the UAE. Of course, this is a case in Europe. Germany, Luxembourg, they are very expensive destinations because living in these countries is much more expensive than living in an island like Cyprus.
Okay, let's go to common mistakes that you as an accountant have seen your clients make. And are there any differences in the mistakes that Cypriots make versus EU nationals and versus non-EU nationals? Let's keep it short.
There is no distinction between the three.
Mm-hmm.
It comes down to the person. So typically, I would say the most common mistakes are, number one, not seeking professional advice. So some people read information on ChatGPT, read information on the YouTube, and they decide their strategy and their tax planning on their own. So
this is more common than,
Yes.
now
Now with
anyone would
ChatGPT,
think.
is becoming very
But
common.
even with YouTube, I get these people contacting us now.
Yes, of
They
course.
will watch this
Finhub, of
video,
course.
they will contact us, or even personally, and then the things that they think they know from watching videos online are very different than the
Yes.
reality.
They are opinionated and they believe that they know what the best course of action for them is. So they are instructing us to do things without knowing the whole story. As I've mentioned before, exit laws, group structure, how the two jurisdictions correspond with each other with regards to taxes. So this is the biggest common mistakes. Other mistakes that we see are, of course, ignorance to the latest laws and regulations, which is not the shareholders' mistakes. Usually it's the accountants' mistakes or the lawyers' mistakes. For instance, some groups didn't know anything about transfer pricing. They were not applying transfer pricing requirements, and they just read it over the internet and have contacted not their accountants because they haven't informed them, but a third-party accountant who told them, of course, you're eligible, you had to be doing A, B, C, and D, you're not doing anything, you're exposed to fines and penalties. But this is common. It depends on the quality of service you're getting, because things are changing every now and then. You need strong team of advisors, accountants, lawyers to support you. This is very important.
What I want to say here, Kyriakos, is that I personally am not against ChatGPT. I use it. I pay the monthly membership. It's excellent. It has even improved my relationship with my accountant, and because it explains things to me more carefully, detailed. However, I still have an accountant, an accounting firm. I still delegate everything to them. I do not delegate to any AI tools these things for my company. And I'm a small company. Imagine having bigger operations and being at a stage where you make such a good turnover, you want to relocate to another country for better lifestyle, and you're trying to use ChatGPT to save money. And it's incredible how this happens with people who already have built businesses, and then they do get in trouble and they do pay fees.
Another common issue is that many business owners think they can hire an in-house to do the job of an experienced accountant of more than 20 years in the industry. And we see this so often. The business owners think that by hiring an in-house accountant, they will pay a bit more, but they're going to save a lot of time, effort.
They do that. Do they hire an auditor inside?
Not an auditor. I'm talking about an accountant who will be in charge of the entire operations, about the accounting, the payroll. This rarely works because good people are never unemployed, and they will be very reluctant to leave an audit and assurance firm, for instance, to join a company in the industry, a Cyprus company in the industry, unless this Cyprus company is very big. Mm-hmm. It's very hard to attract the right people. So this is another mistake that we see.
So better to delegate everything to your accountant. They have all the team. They have team members that deal with the small details, and then medium level people, and then high level to do your audits.
There's a lot of expertise and cumulative knowledge that not one person can own and know. It's all. And we see that they stop collaborating with us. They hire in-house accountants. They make a mess. They fire them, or the in-house accountants leave. It's hard to find someone else, and we take over. We clean the mess, and their accounting records are delayed by a year or two because it's hard to catch up afterwards. It's another mistake. Another mistake that we see, of course, is that the work of advisors, especially accountants and auditors, is not very much appreciated, but not by Europeans, by the locals. So you ask about if we see any difference in common errors. This is a common error that we see, that they don't value the opinion of accountants and auditors, the locals, the Cypriots, and they end up into troubles.
After they end up into a lot of trouble, eventually, I think the Cypriots,
some of them
because the government now is very strict,
yes.
and you get fined.
Yes.
So eventually, you either stop being an entrepreneur. If you don't want to have an accountant, go be an employee. Somebody else will take care of your accountant, or just follow the guidelines and trust somebody for your business.
Lastly, the most common mistake that I see, and this is with Finhub now, we see so many inquiries, so many video calls we are making with applicants. They forget to ask about the exit laws of their countries. So they ask and they learn everything about relocating to Cyprus, all the visa schemes, they watch our programs, our podcasts, they read our articles, and they know everything about Cyprus. They have an opinion, where to live, what to do, and they don't ask their tax experts and their tax accountants and their tax lawyers in their country of origin about the exit laws of their country. So we end up wasting a lot of time advising them about Cyprus just to realize that they cannot leave the UK, they cannot leave Ireland, they cannot leave Germany because of A, B, C reasons. So this is another common mistake. First, they need to speak with their counterparts, with their tax experts in their countries, make sure that they can leave the country, and then waste time to do all the research about the new destination.
It's amazing how eager they are to leave their country. And then
Yes.
when you tell them you need to check your exit laws, for me, when I talk with
This
them,
is the
they
first thing
tell
we
me,
need to be asking them.
but they tell me, my local accountant doesn't know, they're very basic.
This is true. They're
And they
not
tell me
lying.
this thing,
They're
everyone.
not lying. This is because...
So can you help me know my exit
Yes.
laws?
Yeah, this is...
So can they expect the local accountant to know about the exit laws of their country? What can they expect from the local accountant to protect them?
Okay, in bigger countries, Cyprus is a small country. So we are a financial center, so all the accounting firms, they have this international flavor. They know how to advise international clients because we have inbound clients that come, they set up in Cyprus and we service them. In bigger countries like Germany, the UK, I think when you say an accountant, you mean a bookkeeper.
Okay.
So these people
it's different than
yes.
Cyprus. They
Yes.
just find a bookkeeper. It's not like in Cyprus, it's also a tax consultant.
Because we are chartered accountants, we have done the most prestigious and the most difficult examinations and professional examinations in the planet.
But why is it different in the UK and Ireland and Germany, and they just have a bookkeeper?
Because the size of the operations are bigger. So they need bookkeepers to do a lot of work. They don't have this international flavor or need to invest or to leave Germany and go somewhere else. So they don't know anything about what is required for you to leave your country. This is the same, and we get these questions, as you may well know, from all the UK citizens who want to come to Cyprus.
Everyone. They don't know.
Yes, so I need to address them to a UK tax advisor, or they need to find someone else who is not their accountant, who is a specialist international tax expert or a specialist international tax lawyer who is based in the UK to advise them correctly. So we have this issue, and it's good that you brought it up because, yes, here in Cyprus, when we talk about accountants, we don't talk about bookkeepers. We talk about chartered accountants. We talk about chartered certified accountants. We talk about people who are very prestigious. They have a big understanding about the tax laws of Cyprus and other countries, and who are performing tax advice in their day-to-day role. They are not bookkeepers. They are qualified, chartered or certified accountants.
Great. Kyriakos, thank you so much. I think that was such a useful episode because we do read all of your questions under the videos. If you have any other questions, comments, we speak to people all day. Me, Kyriakos, our service providers, and we know your common questions. So there are more episodes coming on specific topics like the non-dom, like high-risk industries, crypto. Make sure you subscribe for those episodes. There are previous episodes that are specific, let's say, to UK and Cyprus relocation, UK to Cyprus, being a non-EU national that wants to get a permanent residency and have a company here. So go watch those episodes too. Remember to subscribe. And if you're wondering where to find the right person, because I believe we made it very clear why it's so important to have the right service provider, go to finhub.com.cy. It's very easy to fill in the form. It just takes 3 minutes to place your request. And then we have a lot of service providers on the platform, accounting firms, vetted, licensed, selected from us, legal firms, fiduciary firms, and they will start placing quotes on your request. You can see the pricing as well. Make sure your request is clear, because if it's vague, it's more difficult to get the quotes. Make your request clear and get quotes and hire a service provider. We make sure that you get high-quality service providers on Finhub, so you don't need to wonder if these people are good or not. We vet them for you. So visit Finhub if you're ready to get started, subscribe, and we will be here for you, educating you on how to start a business, run a business, relocate in Cyprus and other jurisdictions. Bye for now.